Hello again. It's good to look into my camera and see myself and know that behind that, hopefully someday, there's something more than me. And that would be you, whoever you are. Whoever has decided to tap into this and might think it's worthwhile. Or whichever one of my children or grandchildren or great, whatever down the line, grandchildren decide, hey, we'll see what great had to say today. I'm hopeful for that outcome, and that it will be a good outcome. I hope that there will be a season of your life when one of these might come in handy, I guess is the way I'd say it. Be useful to you, help you navigate a little bit where it would otherwise be harder to navigate your life circumstances. I know there have been times in my life when the navigating has been more difficult, and what I'm trying to do here is capture some truths, some laws, some things that I didn't realize at the time when I was facing circumstances that if I'd known the truth and the law behind the truth and how to apply that in my life, I would have been saved a lot of problems. So I'm looking at all this in the big picture mode, I guess you could say. And I do see somebody besides me, behind me, as I look into the camera and get my thoughts out about what I might say. I think generally about some of the things I might say, but I don't have anything here to look at or whatever. I just kind of let the Spirit be my guide, is what I'm hoping. I mentioned the last time in the last video upload that there are seasons of our lives that we pass through. I mentioned passing through the gift receiving phase of our life. We don't care if we get gifts. We're just coming out of Christmas time, and it's not bothersome to us at all if we don't look under the tree and see that we're not getting gifts, because my wife and I both have no desire to get gifts, and we encourage people not to give gifts, in fact, to save their money, use it on other things. I don't know if you've seen that video or not, but in that video also I mentioned Thoreau, since we're always talking about the transcendentalists, and he was one, my favorite actually. He said that everyone should pass through the, quote, hunter stage, unquote, of development, knowing that there would come a time that what was once exciting, maybe going hunting or whatever, was really important, and we look forward to it and almost live for it in certain phases of our life, if you're like me. But then later on, you couldn't bring yourself to pull the trigger on anything. So I consider myself as having passed through that stage and the gift receiving stage, and I explained that a little bit in the last video. So I won't belabor the point, other than to get you to reflect on, which I hope you have, on some of the stages of life that you might be passing through that you think are so tough and they mean everything to you, and you find out that quite often down the road a ways, what you thought was the biggest deal in the world isn't that big a deal anymore at all. It just doesn't matter in the long term, in the bigger picture. And yet at the time, it's part of our development. So good luck with it all, and I hope what I'm saying here can help just a little bit. Just a squinchy little bit. For those of you that listen. The nice thing about these is I keep telling myself, because I'm thinking if somebody was sitting here with me, they'd just get up maybe and walk off. And I realized that with this technology equipment, all you've got to do to shut me down is put your finger out there and press a button of some sort, and I'm done. And that's fine. Maybe there'll be another time when you think, oh, I should have listened to that one. I'll look it up and I'll push the on button again. And this time maybe it'll sink a little deeper. One of the things I found out is, and I taught school for 33 years, different age groups. The one commonality that I could say was a commonality was that if a student doesn't want to learn, they won't. So as a teacher, I put some thought into that, and I thought, well, how can I've got this concept I'd like them to learn. I was a language arts teacher, so I wanted to teach them a language arts skill that would benefit them lifelong and they could use. But guess what? If they didn't want to learn it, there was no use. And I remember this is when I was teaching junior high age kids, because they're a lively bunch. And I don't know, for some reason it seemed to bring out the best in my, what do I want to say, my abilities to dig a little deeper and find out what I had that might interest them, because they want to be interested, but their interest span is very short. And if what you say is not very captivating, you're toast as far as the learning process goes. So anyway, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. What could I say that would actually benefit somebody? Not just that that could benefit somebody, but could actually benefit somebody and they'd learn from it and want to learn. But my finding is that at different stages of our life, we want to learn different things. I did, and I don't think you're going to be any different. You're captivated, and your thought processes go down a certain path, and they are really intent, and you're striving and preparing and thinking constantly about certain things. And then at other stages of our life, that doesn't matter at all, and you're searching something else. Well, right now, one of the things that I search for the most is a way to make my life count for something beyond just sucking air in and breathing it out. I mean, and there's lots of ways to do that. I realize that. But one of the ways that I've found that's meaningful to me since I came onto this YouTube concept is that I could have some longevity even. I've always liked the term longevity. I've sometimes asked myself, 50 years after I'm dead, will anybody even remember who I was? Have you ever asked yourself that question? 50 years after you've gone, will anybody even know about you or care? Is what you're doing with your life meaningful to the point that it's going to have, should we say, some shelf life after you're dead? I've always felt like, and there are others that wouldn't agree with me, but I've always felt like life experiences should have some shelf life. Otherwise, we have to learn the same thing over and over and over and over. And it's the same with generations. if my life doesn't have a little shelf life to it, then every generation after me is going to have to learn the exact same things, the exact same way that I did, and it's not going to get any better for one generation than it is another. And again, I know people that would vehemently disagree with that, but I honestly think that through the generations, if we put forth our best effort, what we do will have shelf life. And if it's for a day, that's great. A week, a month, a year, 5 years, 10, 12, 20, 50, a lifetime. Who's to know? Who's to say? Have you learned things from people from reading about the life experiences and hearing about people that have lived long, long ago? I have. Well, I'm not a famous person by any means. I'm not in the history books. But I'm in a book of a sort with this YouTube concept. And I can be shelved, and I can be dug out and looked at again and shelved, and who knows, maybe it'll be somebody else that has happened onto the same thing that'll get with you and say, hey, did you hear what great grandpa had to say about such and such? And maybe you or they, whoever, will say, no, but well, just a minute. There was this one time. I didn't listen to it all, and they'll tell you the name of it, and you can go back and look it up and see what I had to say. And if it happens to hit at a time in your life when you really need that, then bingo. Not only did you score, but I scored big time. And it's not scoring in the scriptures. It talks about glory. When the Savior was in Gethsemane, he said, glorify me. He's praying to his Heavenly Father, and he said, glorify me, that I may glorify thee. Stop and think about that for a minute. What I'm doing here, if it has any value, will glorify my earthly father and mother and my grandparents and their grandparents. Can you see where I'm going with all this? And if it has carry down value to you, then, and you apply it and live by it, and there's some truth there that guides you right, makes life happier, helps you spread joy to other people, then, and bring them happiness, then you're adding to that glory. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting item to look up in the index to the scriptures, because it's quite often mentioned, and glory is it's kind of a reward. It's kind of like the trophy that we didn't get, but we really did get, because somebody that we taught, or that we were able to help, applied what we had said, and there was joy and happiness that was generated from that, and that's glory, in my view. And I think if you look in the scriptures, you'll find that's a pretty correct application of the definition for that word. Somebody that your ancestry and your posterity can look at and say, there was some benefit there, and it helped. Joy came from that. Well, I won't talk about glory so much. I might some other time, when I got more time to actually dig out the scriptures and show you where it's at and get you to think a little more on it. But for now, just think about it as you're making choices and going through these phases of your life that sometimes seem like serious trials. But when you wake up, you shake your head a little bit, wash your face with some cold water, look into the wind. I used to like to walk straight into the wind. And anyway, it's great. The wind is a powerful thing. It can not only wake you up, it can take you places. I don't think I was going to insert this. I hope I have. By the way, if I happen to tell you something that I've already said in another video, sometimes it might be by accident, but sometimes it might be on purpose. And you might not know the difference, but if there's anything I learned as a teacher, it's that repetition is not a bad thing. Anybody that has become a ball player or has learned sports, baseball, basketball, volleyball, track, it doesn't matter. It's ping pong, tennis, you name the sport. It could be anything. Repetition is important. The advantage I have over you is you're not going to know whether what I did repetitiously was on accident or on purpose. So there you go. Just take it either way and use it for your benefit. But I was talking about the wind, so I got sidetracked a little bit. Talking about the wind having an advantage. We came up one day when he was pushing the sleigh, a sleigh that we piled milk on. And my mother always used to say, don't cry over spilled milk. But we'd always tend to, we'd get tugging, and pretty soon a can would go off the back of the sleigh and fall down, the lid pop open, all the milk would spill out onto the ground, onto the snow. And after all that work of feeding cows and taking care of them, and finally get the milk and strain it and work to get them taken care of, and we just think we've got it. And now a couple of dumb kids that didn't know how to pull the sleigh up to the road where the milk truck was going to pick it up spilled the milk. And it was a pretty serious thing at our house because that's how we made a living. So we were trained not told told maybe not to spill the milk, but we did on occasion. Usually happened when there was icy conditions and the sleigh didn't pull just like it normally did. And the cans on the sleigh would slide a little easier than they normally do, and kerplash. Well, when I'd go into the house, my mother would say, "Don't cry over spilled milk," because we would feel so bad. It's my younger brother and I. She'd say, "Don't cry over spilled milk because there's nothing you can do about it. It's gone. It's past. It's history. We can't get it back in the can." But there's no sense going through life feeling bad about milk that got spilled because of something you did that was neglectful or stupid. Maybe it's sometimes the word. Even though you've been told and knew better, the milk gets spilled. And she knew that if we go through life crying about it, no good was going to come from that. So when something like that happens, what she was really saying is, pick yourself up, look into the wind, and it'll be all right. Big picture, it'll be all right. Little picture, not so all right. Really hurts, really does damage to you. But there's no sense letting that damage just continue to happen over and over and over again in your mind for the rest of your life, or even for the rest of the day as far as she was concerned. So she'd say, don't cry over spilled milk. That might be what I'm going to have to call this particular video upload. We'll see. But I was talking a little about wind, how I used to like to walk into the wind, even a blizzard. I used to just like to face it and walk straight into it, let the sleet and the storm just fire right into your face. And there's something about that. I might be weird, but there's something about that that invigorated me and made me glad to be alive. And anyway, so I'll bring up another story. This same brother, a younger brother of mine, I was talking about, and I don't mention names on here because I don't know that people want their names mentioned or something that's going to go public, but doesn't mean that I don't care about them or that I didn't know them personally. It's just that I don't want their names to be used if they don't want them used. So, and I'm not going to ask permission every time I tell a story. So anyway, it was my younger brother, and we pulled our milk cans up that morning, and it was a Sunday morning. And now that I mentioned, I think maybe I have told this story again, but that's okay. You get a different take on it. That way you can see if I'm lying. Anyway, this same sleigh was a sleigh that had enough room on it for both of us, because we had to have a big one to get the milk cans on. It had some runners underneath and little guide bars on the side. And it would be a pretty expensive sleigh if you had to buy it these days. But we hauled our milk cans up, and the wind was blowing. But we got the milk cans there safely, and I don't know which one of us had the idea, but we got this idea that, hey, look at we started to look at the condition of the road. It's just a dirt roadway in front of our house, but it was wintertime in the early spring of the year, and it had rained a little bit, and the snow was pretty much off the road, and it was just almost straight ice. Just icy conditions on that little country dirt road. And you might not know where I live, but I live, that little dirt road that went by in front of our house had a straight shot for about a mile or a mile and a quarter, straight down the road. And we got the thought, we might have enough time before we went off to our church meetings to go for a little ride. And we figured out how to do it. And wouldn't you know it, we decided how to use the power of that wind. So we got a 4x8 piece of plywood, and I can't remember for sure where we got it. I think it was in the garage that was there next to the house. Anyway, we got that 4x8 piece of plywood, and if I remember right, I had a little longer arms, so I could reach out and grab the plywood, on each end. I'd reach out and grab the plywood on each end and hold it in place, and my younger brother would get on the back, and we had foot controls on the sleigh runners, so we could steer it to one side or the other. Well, we jumped on that sleigh and lifted that plywood into place, and holy cow, we went shooting down that road. It kind of put the fear in both of us and surprised us at the same time, because we held that plywood piece up so that we could get some power behind us, and we didn't realize how much power was in that wind because we went scooting. And there's one little place where we had to take a rise in the hill. We went scooting right up that little hill and down the other side, and the road was still icy, and we just kept going and going and going and going and going. Anyway, it went for at least a full mile down that road, and then there was a steeper hill, and we got partway up that hill, and anyways, I can't remember whether the road condition got worse or the wind slowed down, but that's where we stopped. So now we're down the road about a mile with a sleigh and an 4x8 piece of plywood, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get back to the house in the wind with all of that before we needed to get ready and head to church. And luckily, wouldn't you know it, Mom and Dad came through for us again. They had kind of watched us because they knew what we were doing when they could see us no more. So they better come and get us. And So about the time we needed to turn around and come home, we started a little ways, and here come an old truck, and we were able to put everything in it and head back to the house. But if we had, there's just an example of how that wind can cause problems. It can make things slippery. We can lose milk off the end of the sleigh and cry about it, even though we didn't that morning. But if we had been crying about it ever since the last time we did it, we sure wouldn't have had any fun riding that sleigh. And we had a heck of a good time riding that sleigh. It was fun. It was good old homemade dairy farm fun between cow milkings. And so little things like that, we have to remember as we go through life. There's those little things that just thrill us, and there's other things that just get us down, and there's a purpose for both ends of that spectrum. Don't ever forget it. Don't ever forget that there's a purpose in the downside, in the spilled milk side, and there's a purpose in the sleigh ride side that never ended and turned out just perfectly. And they can happen just days apart too. I'm always saddened when I hear of somebody that had something bad go wrong in their life, and it affected them so adversely that they took some sort of serious course of action that was caused by that negativity in their life, not realizing that, oh, there's going to be a bright side here coming up if you just hang on. So that's my message to you here today is, and I think I'll end with that, is don't let those downsides in your life get root and have permanency. Don't cry over that spilled milk forever. Because the next day, you're going to be scooting down the road laughing and having a good time. It might not always be the next day, but it's coming. And wouldn't it be tragic if you did something that was hurtful or permanent, that caused others to mourn and have that same kind of permanency or the tendency to it, when in reality the Lord has something for you that you're going to really enjoy, and you might not even know what it is yet. But when you finally get to enjoy it, you'll say, oh my, am I ever glad I didn't beat my head into a cliff when I got the milk spilled on the ground, or whatever else it was. It could be a lot more serious than that, I realize. And it could be more hurtful. But I guess the point is, hurt's okay. But if it just keeps hurting and hurting and hurting, then you might reconsider your course of thought, because that's not okay. And there are better days ahead. And you just need to kind of clear our thoughts, put our face to the wind, let the storm beat on us for a while until we can think clearly, and then march ahead to the next adventure. It's quite a life. It is quite a life. It's a good life. Both ends of that spectrum are indicators that there are good days there. It's a good life. It's all part of a process that we don't completely understand, but it's a good process. And yes, it is a good life. Enjoy the ride just like we did. Love you. Bye.